Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Revelation chapter 17, the great prostitute and the beast. Um, if you definitely missed last week because we were at camp meeting, but the week before that we saw the seven bowls be poured out. And if I was to remind you where we're at, demons the devil is using right now and drawing all of the world, all of the lost world, towards Armageddon to go fight against God. They're headed towards Jerusalem. And God's caused all these cataclysmic things in the earth and actually made a path. Explain this picture that this chapter is described as in the 7-year tribulation, the woman that rides the beast, or the great prostitute, it might be headed in your Bible, or the prostitute that rides the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And when you start reading it, you don't realize that all the way through this not very long chapter, it's explaining in great detail what really all of this means. But I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, and so that we can keep on task of what's happening. So what's happened so far is 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls, and we've had of all kinds of terrible things have happened on the earth. Many people have been killed and that followed God. Were killed for following God, and they're up in heaven now. And many people are choosing whether they take the mark of the beast at this point in towards almost the end of the 7-year tribulation. And if they do take the mark of the beast, what they're really saying is, I don't choose God, I choose the devil. And that's the only way they can eat. So you're going to have a lot of holdout people that aren't going to take the mark. Maybe they got saved and maybe that aren't, and they're hiding. All kinds of stuff like that's going on. We see the Antichrist has showed up within the last probably year and a half, and he's walked into the temple that the Israelites, the Jews, were allowed to build in Jerusalem again, and he's claimed himself to be God and the Antichrist, and who works specifically for Satan himself. And then there's a false prophet out there that's claiming to telling everybody to worship the beast, to worship this false god. But now what we're going to see is a picture of, let me pull it up here. I got it on your screen. No, let me give you the spoiler alert first. I'm sorry. So if we're looking at this, I'm going to say what it is, and then we're going to really break it down while we read it verse by verse. So this is a prostitute on one beast that has 7 heads. We don't know that they're lions, but 7 heads, and it has 10 horns. One beast that a prostitute is riding. So if you think about a prostitute, we just got to think about that for a minute. We watch crime movies, we probably know what a prostitute is, right? A prostitute requires basically a pimp most of the time. Okay? So a prostitute it's not the Antichrist, but or the devil. And this prostitute happens to be riding this thing called 7 heads with 10 horns. And what we're going to find out, this is the spoiler alert, so that we can actually now look at it and go, oh, let's make sense out of that, is what it looks like if we read, and it gives good details. The 7 heads represent 7 world governments that have happened throughout time, since the beginning of time. If you remember, Amy's counting the heads. Did I get a good picture? I might have got a bad picture. Good. So, in other words, if Egypt was a world leader that they ran everything and everybody went to them for help, all the other countries were still their countries, but there was a world leader. And then Persia, Babylonia, all these different people. And then when you come to the Jesus time, the Romans were the world leader. So these 7 heads represent, we're going to find out, from the beginning of time up until right now, world leaders, one head at a time. They didn't show up twice at a time. So one head was some kind of world leader dominating the world, right? But the prostitute that's working for the devil, whatever this prostitute is, and it isn't a person, that's working for the devil, has been working this world leader and the world at the time. This prostitute has always been involved. So she's riding this first dynasty, the second dynasty, the third dynasty. Whatever she is, this prostitute, we're going to read what she is. She's controlling how these people act because they don't follow God. Okay? Now the 10 horns, we're going to find out almost the end of the spoiler alert, they only show up at this very moment at the end of the 7-year tribulation, just before the war of Armageddon when God comes out of the sky on a white horse and wipes people out. These 10 horns represent the 10 world leaders, not the main world leader, at the time of the 7-year tribulation end. And they're going to band together, not with the prostitute, but they're going to band together with the Antichrist that's working straight for the devil. So these 10 world leaders, if you think about it, let's just pretend it's today. One of the world leaders we know of is Donald Trump. We know the Canadian guy, I don't know his name, he's a world leader. We know that the EU has a world leader. We know that Putin, Iran even has. So 10 main world leaders. What they're going to do is they're suddenly going to all give all of their power to this Antichrist, this one world leader, this final head, right, of the world, and God's going to crush them. That's how this works.
Revelation 17, which is about this prostitute and this beast, about symbolism. This isn't a literal prostitute and a literal beast. This is symbolic of other things.
Yep, it's a picture, and it's going to describe this picture as literal things. So, Revelation 17 is a view of how the devil has dominated the world since the beginning. It's a view of each world government, the 7, since the beginning, and how the devil's dominated them. And it's a view of, right now, the devil's demise. He loses, right? Isn't that wild? So that's the spoiler alert. So this is just pictures that are going to refer to the passages we're going to read. So let's read chapter 17, verses 1 and 2. I'll read them out loud. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute." So we're going to start to learn what the great prostitute is, but throughout this chapter, they're going to continue to describe this person. The great prostitute who is seated on many waters. So we're also going to find out what many waters is. It's actually going to tell us later in this chapter. I'm going to keep giving you spoiler alerts so that this flows and makes more sense. And in verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. So this immorality, this sexual immorality, can easily be considered great lust. And what we're going to find out is it's not just sexual immorality, because it's going to keep describing it. It's going to describe this thing. It's going to later call it Mystery Babylon. Somebody asked a couple weeks ago, Revelation keeps talking about Babylon. Is it talking about Iraq? Because Iraq used to be Babylon. It's not. But Babylon represents all kinds of bad from a long time ago. And so it's used in the Bible to describe evil things. But now, this one is going to be referred to as Mystery Babylon, a very awful thing that's happening on the earth. And so, in verse 2, it says, whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers in the earth have become drunk. So, the kings of the earth, the leaders of the earth, are following this prostitute, and it says that, and they are seated on many waters. We're going to find out that that means everywhere on earth. That's what it means. So I've got this picture of, people that are leaders in government, people that are leaders in banks, people that are leaders. We're going to find out that this great prostitute is luring all the world for personal gain, for lusting after anything I can get you to lust after to get you away from God. And it's going to turn out to be mainly the monetary system. So what we're seeing now is this, I will show you, watch this, in verse 1, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute. God's not going to just show us by telling it to John. He's not going to just show us the picture of this evil happening. He's showing you the picture of what evil has been going on for all time, and you really don't know until you read this chapter. You can read the whole Bible, and you won't be able to say, without reading this chapter, what evil has been going on since the beginning. You can say, oh, well, the devil, and oh, well, sin. But there's a very particular thing this prostitute is doing, and it's going to start opening that up in just a minute here. So let's read, starting at verse 3. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. That's our picture of that beast, right? That was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. And it's going to tell us what those mean. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold jewels and pearls. So I'm just going to stop right there at that comma. This prostitute that we're going to see that's been controlling world leaders since the beginning of time is seen wearing things, purple and scarlet. That means you're rich, adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. That's the first thing you see about this person that's ruling the world leaders and enticing them to run earth based on jewels and money, right? And then it goes on, that was just a comma, and holding in her hand a golden cup full of the abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. It's not done describing her. So this prostitute that's been ruling every single dynasty all throughout time in a sinful way is luring people to lust sexually, to lust immorally, physically, and with money. So this prostitute is more than just the prostitute on a crime show. This prostitute is not a person. This is a thing the devil's using to deceive everybody. And God's describing it as a prostitute, and everybody's buying it. Everybody's trying to save as much of it, and everybody's giving up anything they can to get it. They want sexual immorality, and they want money. That's what they want. And then it goes on in verse 5, and on her forehead was written a name, and this is where they're going to start describing her as Mystery Babylon. The name of Mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I'm not going to read verse 6 yet. It's only the first. Okay, so I just want to read right up there. So what it says is, this prostitute is the mother of, this is the first one. This is the one where the rest of it comes from. And so it says that this Babylon the Great, this Mystery Babylon, is the mother of all prostitutes, the mother of all earth's abominations. So it's coming from the same place. The devil is using lust for things and impurity and anything that rebels against God. He's using this to pull you away from God, and he's calling it Mystery Babylon. But what it's really going to turn out to be mainly is false religions, false idols, money, and gain. That's what, did I got that picture here? So the devil is using, the devil's the pimp. And he's got a prostitute, and the prostitute is worldly gain. Worldly gain of anything I can gain. Just like back, you ready for this, in the Tower of Babel. After the flood, when everybody, before the earth was scattered, everybody was growing in a large group, thousands of years earlier, and there was a King Nimrod, and he started to build a tower because he thought we can do our own thing, separate from God. And he taught everybody to work with me, and we'll build a tower to the sky, the tower that would later be called the Tower of Babel. Because God saw that everybody was working together. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ. So it takes a turn here. It says, I saw the woman, that same woman who's been ruling the earth for all time with lust and greed, for the lust of money and the lust of sexual impurities and all that kind of stuff. Now I see her drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ. So this is going along with what's happening in the end of the 7-year tribulation. This Antichrist, this false prophet too, they're after anybody who believes in God. That's why the mark of the beast is there. We're killing everybody. And what he sees now is this thing. Everybody's after this. Now everybody that wants the lust of the world is willing to turn on everybody that loves God. So they're killing them and they're becoming martyrs. So John is looking and he sees this prostitute These people that have been prostituted, these people that have been tricked, these people that are deceived, that are just following after lust and saying, no, that God up there, he's trying to take away my money. That God is trying to take away my lustful thing that I want. That God's trying to take away my coin collection and my 401k and all of that kind of thing. Let's kill those people that believe in Jesus so that they don't do this to us anymore. And that they do so many people, they kill so many people, they're drunk with the blood of people that loved Jesus in the 7-year tribulation. And we can see that because earlier chapters, we saw this already beginning earlier, and so many people were being killed, and we saw them in heaven in the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, that they were called an unnumberable amount. So, I mean, I can understand drunk. Drunk is overdone it. Drunk is too many. Drunk is, man, you can't even stand up, right? So, they're really going after this, in the end, this thing that's been trying to control the world is trying to end anything good. Okay? So now, isn't he cool? I use him when we're going to talk about a view of something. Isn't that cool? I like him. I found him a long time ago. Okay. So let's read the second half of 17 verse 6 and go on. It says, when I saw her, I marveled greatly, but the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. So right there, we find out that if I got this far, now I'm going to get my answers. I don't need Rob to tell me anything, right? But if Rob didn't tell me anything, many people go and open chapter 17 and they finish verse 3 and they go, yeah, this is too weird for me. I can't understand it, right? And they'll never get to the second half of verse 6 where it says, I'm going to actually explain to you what that picture is, right? So all I did is keep everybody from closing the book too early and give you a spoiler alert. We're going to see exactly what I'm saying and what Bible scholars believe to the best of our ability and their ability of what it all means, but it's going to be described. So let's look at what does it mean. So verse 8, it says, the beast that you saw, this is a wild statement. It's going to be repeated a couple times. So this is where view guy comes in. Because we're going to develop a view, because the statement I'm going to read is going to sound really familiar, okay? But it's not going to be what you think if naturally. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. So what it says is the beast that you saw was and is not and is going to rise, and then God's going to kill him. That's what it says. Now, we naturally get this view. If you stop right here, a lot of people stop and they go, oh man, this is just too much for me. Everybody stops in this chapter and the next chapter because it's just too confusing. And so I'm just trying to make it simple. This is not the beast. This is not the Antichrist who has the wound on his head, who faked death or died and got back up again, who was and is not and then rises again. This isn't him. It's going to go on because you just got to read a couple more verses. It's going to say, yeah, that's not him. It's something else. Okay? So it describes the beast that you saw that was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. So when we started this chapter, there was another beast, and it wasn't the first or the second beast. It wasn't the Antichrist, and it wasn't the false prophet, the first and second beast. The beast you saw in this chapter had 7 heads and 10 horns. So that's the beast we're talking about, right? So this beast that you saw that was and is not, he's going to describe what this means now, because that's really confusing. What are you talking about, right? But let's go on. And the dwellers on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel and see the beast, because it was and it is not and it is to come. I'm going to give you another spoiler alert before we go on. The people on earth who think, I'm right, we need to kill God who's up in heaven, we got to march to Armageddon, they're going to have their devil exposed, and they're going to have the lie exposed. It's going to be irrefutable, and they're going to marvel when they realize what they fell for. They're going to marvel when they realize that, wow, my money wasn't the thing that was going to save me. My money wasn't going to give me eternal life. My lust for flesh, or saying that, telling my kids you're not a boy or a girl, wasn't going to fix earth. It was a lie, right? They're going to marvel when they see the truth come out. So, let's look in verse 9 and see what the view is according to this chapter. This calls for a mind with wisdom. I'll say it calls for a mind with wisdom. We got to stop and think about this. This is not the chapter you blow through, right? The 7 heads, we're going to describe the 7 heads on the beast. Remember, he has 7 heads and 10 horns, and there's a lady riding them, right? Okay, so it's just the beast. We're just going to talk about his 7 heads. They are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. 7 mountains. Going to keep describing the 7 heads. So first, he just described the 7 heads as 7 mountains. All right? He goes on to say, they are also 7 kings. So the mountains seem to be a place that somebody's a king over, and there's 7 of them. There's 7 kings over 7 places. Does that make sense? So far. And then it says, 5 of whom have fallen, one is, and the other has not yet come. Sounds familiar. We just read that, right? So now we know it's not the Antichrist who had the wound in his hand. It was fatal, and he got back up again. This is totally something else. Now what it's really saying, if we stop and think about it, and you got to really think about it for a long time, but I'm spoiler alert, what it's saying is these are 7 kings in an order. Some used to be here, but they're gone. Now there ain't one, but there's one that's coming. And I'm going to kill him. That's what God's going to say right here. Okay? So these 7 kings, let's keep going. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. It's so wild. But I'm going to make it make sense, and I'm going to go over to the screen. Okay. So I'm just going to go over to the screen. So remember, all we've described so far is the 7 heads on this beast that this prostitute's riding. He's describing it in detail. But we got to stop and think about it. So he said that the 7 heads represent 7 mountains. Mountains are a piece of land. Okay? They're big pieces of land. 7 kings. It's also 7 kings. So there's 7 kings over 7 mountains. So 1 king per mountain. So there's 7 of them, right? And then it says, now we're figuring out their world powers. So now we're looking at, if there's, since the beginning of time, 5 of them were, what did it say? 5 of them were, or 6 of them are, 1 is not, and is to come, and then the 8th goes with the rest of them. That's what it says. So if we look back at the world leaders that dominated, I do need to start in the middle so it makes sense to us. When we remember the time of Jesus, Israel was ruled by Rome. Does that make sense? So there was a world leader. It was Rome. Israel was still Israel, but Rome was their boss, right? They didn't change the name of Israel to Rome, but they were the dominant force, okay? So people were allowed to remain people groups, but there was a dominant force. So over a period of time, if we just stop and we walk away from the Tower of Babel, where God now made world takes over, that's how it works. So that's what the Bible's also describing. Then the Medo-Persians, and then the Greeks. And then you have all these Greek-speaking people when the Romans take over. You notice how when Jesus shows up, everybody speaks Greek? It's because they were the dominating force until the Romans took over. Isn't that wild? Now watch. The Romans were this dominating force, and then it says 6 were and 1 is not, but is to come. So if you have dynasties, and this is what this prostitute is this prostitute has tricked people into believing that world gain and dominance and being powerful and me, my, and sexual morality is the way to happiness. They've been tricked by a prostitute that's been used by a pimp called Satan. That's where we're at so far. Woohoo! Woohoo! Well, we've only begun. How exciting. Yeah. Okay. So then in 11 it says, as for the beast that was and is not, is the 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. So I just wanted, before we go to the next verse, God's saying, I want you to see what's been going on for all of time. It's always been one guy I'm going to kill him. That's what he's saying. It's not a bunch of little things I got to go fight and they're tricking me because I'm confused and I'm not a very smart God. No, he knows exactly what's going on. And he's going to wipe it out. But what he's going to do, the world is leaving home, leaving their job, packing up their bags, and they're headed to a place called Armageddon to fight a superpower in the sky that they can't beat. That's nuts. That's where we left off. And so we're going to sort of pick up there. So in Revelation 17:12, this is where we're going to pick up. And the 10 horns that you saw. Now we're on the 10 horns. So we're still talking about the beast that the prostitute's riding, right? The prostitute was tricking everybody into lusting and wanting selfish gain. And over all the 7 dynasties of earth, all the way up until now. Now who's these 10 horns? Okay, it's going to say. So the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast, and they're of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. So, what we see now is we've already seen from the beginning of time to the end of the 7-year tribulation, just before the war of Armageddon, and now what we see is a picture of the 10 rulers of the earth. Not that there aren't 40, but they're 10 main rulers of the earth. So let's say if it happened today, Trump's probably one, the Canada guy, and the Iraq guy, right, or Iran guy, and I pointed at Amy and said the Iran guy, I don't know why, but that's weird. But, it's yeah, Netanyahu, these 10 world leaders are going to, well, Netanyahu wouldn't be the one, because he would become a Christian by now. The Chinese guy, Yin Yong Yang, Cheng Hao Lo, I don't know, King Chinese guy. So these 10 horns at the end of the 7-year tribulation are the 10 world leaders that decide, okay, the Antichrist is the world leader. We're going to do whatever you say. Watch what, it's going to tell us what they're going to do now. But these 10 kings, they haven't received royal power. So in other words, this one world leader, this Antichrist that's running the planet, he has not looked at say Trump today and said, you're with me. He's not looked at the Canadian president, prime minister, or whatever he is, and he has not said, you're with me. But he's about to, right? Whatever his name is. Yes. Yin Yong Hao. And, Yin Yin Yang. I'm sorry. But, so he's about to, and they're going to receive authority from this world leader for a very short period of time, and they're going to hand over their power to him. So in other words, whatever he says, they're going to do. And whatever he says, they're going to make their people do. And now we're going to read what happens. Verse 14, it says, they will make war on the Lamb. Who's that? Jesus Christ. They're literally going to fight Jesus, right? And the Lamb will conquer them. The Lamb's going to kill him. Okay? For he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those with him are called the chosen and faithful. So, just right here, what we see is now at the end of the 7-year tribulation, when the 8th king rises, the world dominant final leader of the earth, the Antichrist himself, makes himself known, claims to be God. He's going to anoint and appoint 10 world leaders and say, you're with me, get your people, pack up, and let's go and fight God. And they're going to do it, right? So now we're going to read the very last part. We're going to break it down the next 4 verses.
But before you do that, the best part of that verse, talk about it.
Go ahead.
You're going to talk about it? Well, the best part of that verse is that the Lamb will triumph.
He's going to kill him. Here's what I like. I'm glad you brought that up, because what I was thinking when I was thinking about this earlier is the devil has done all these things to deceive people. He's done sexual immorality. He's done money. He's done worldly gain. He's done power. He's done all kinds of crazy things to deceive people. He's done demonic things. He's done all kinds of wild things. There's such a description of what the devil's done to defeat God. And this is how God's going to defeat the devil. I'm going to kill him.
It's really easy to miss in the very first spoiler alert is really in the very first verse where the angel say to John, "Come, and I will show you the punishment."
Yeah,
and
the judgment.
You get distracted from all of the
Yeah.
details,
Wow.
but it tells you right in verse 1 that this whole chapter is about the punishment. And then in verse 14, it tells us, confirms how the story ends. It's almost like the angel is like, I'm going to tell you, did you ever get a book and read the last chapter first? So that's kind of what the angel is doing in verse 1, like, hey, this is going to happen, but they're not going to win.
Right.
And then verse 14 gives like this amazing, like you can almost read past this one sentence, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is the Lord of Lords. He is the King, and with him will be his called, chosen.
One thing I'm going to ask God when I get to heaven, everybody's got a question they want to ask God when they get to heaven. One of them I want to ask is, God, can the devil read? Did you keep him from being able to read the Bible? Why did he keep fighting when he knew he was going to lose? What? Right. Yeah. Okay. So, verse 15. And the angel said to me, the waters, now we're going to talk about the waters. Remember back in the beginning, this prostitute rode on many waters? Okay. So it's going to say the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. So it's everybody on earth. That's what it's saying. So in other words, back then, the waters were places you would sail to. So everywhere you would sail to on earth, that's where this lying prostitute is seated. And then in verse 16, and the 10 horns that you saw, now this is going to say what the 10 horns are, so more details about the 10 horns, and it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. Let's get confused now. So the devil has been using this thing called this mystery Babylon, which is this prostitute, which has tricked the earth to be prostituted away from God by lust and stuff. And so now at the end of the 7-year tribulation, when the whole world bands together with the Antichrist, they're going to turn on money. They're going to turn on sexual immorality. But I want to talk about why. There's only one reason. Watch this. People are so in love with money. People are so in love with themselves. People are so inundated with me, my, and trans this and all these awful lies of the devil. And they're all these things. And now these 10 world leaders are saying, okay, you're my people, follow me, let's go fight God. And all these people are like, but I still got money, I want to get a Slurpee, they're on sale today. And somebody else is like, I still got overtime, I was going to buy a boat, I'm not going with you. And all these people are saying, no, I've got this, I've been cheating on my wife and my girlfriend's still here, and I want to go do this awful thing. And the devil now can't get them to go fight God. Because he's tricked them so badly, they want their prostitute, right? And now, so the devil uses the 10 world leaders to turn on money and turn on all those things. In other words, take them away. So now, okay, well, your money's worthless. Now you can't buy, eat, choose, or anything unless you do my will. So everybody's now forced, in a sense, to go fight God. They have nothing left because they've turned on the monetary system. They've turned on the prostitute system. They've turned on anything that people can answer their lust to by saying, you can't have that. They've turned on, that's what it says right here. They've turned on the thing that tricked everybody. And so now everybody is marching towards Armageddon, right? Isn't that the wildest thing? Okay, so they will make her, okay, and then it describes, let me just read it again. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitutes. We just read that. They will make her desolate and naked. In other words, they're going to remove it, right? They will and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. In other words, we're burning up money. We're burning up everything you thought you had. This is the devil doing this, right? Okay, in verse 17 it says, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast. until the words of God are fulfilled. And my screen disappeared. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. So we literally finished the chapter, but there's something serious we need to think about. I think Amy summed up one of the very most important things is God wins, right?
I think that God is in control of all this crazy chapter.
Yep.
That God is in control of this, even from all of those past kingdoms that you showed us on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of the rise and fall of all of those kingdoms was done by God. And it says right here that He always has been in control and always will be in control, and He will be.
And I want to act like Amy for a minute and say, how does this apply to us today? Right? So there's things that we've learned. The devil wants to tempt you with money and lust. We've learned right now that the main theme that the devil has used since the beginning of time is to lure you away with money and greed and lust. That's his theme. He doesn't have another theme. He wants to trick you away from God. So we have to ask ourselves, how important is money to us, right? How important is things to us? Not that we're supposed to go give everything away and go be poor or anything like that, but we want to think about it. We'll talk about it again in a minute. The devil wants you to not know it's him. Did you notice it's like the third person away from him that's doing this prostitute? It's like, oh no, it's the prostitute. Oh, it's the Antichrist. Well, I think the prostitute is the Antichrist. No, that's the false prophet. There's always right on the beast. It's like all this confusion, and that's the devil, the author of confusion, right? So, and he doesn't want you to know that. He doesn't want you to think that if you're more out of control, and you have to buy lotto tickets, and you have to gamble, and you have to cheat on your wife, and you have to look at pornography, and you have to, just buy all things and not worry about your kids' lives or anything like that, and it's just all about you, and all kinds of weird sex things. He doesn't want you to know that he's the one tricking you into doing that, and he's luring you away from God. In other words, God wants you to know, don't put your money on world leaders. Huge, wild thing we've watched over this voting time. Weird things we've watched. Don't get me wrong. I don't normally say who I voted for. You might be able to guess. But some people kind of got overboard on both sides. They're the only salvation we have. They're the only one that can fix my whole life. No, they can't. They cannot do anything. For all you know, Biden or Trump could be the Antichrist. You don't know. You have no idea what God has in store or what's really going on. So we can't put our hope in anything but the one who's proven every single time that what he said was true, did everything he said he was going to do, and can do everything he says he's going to do. Yeah. So questions to think about. Is money more important than God? And in this world we live in, let's just look at it for a minute. The world we've been set up in, it's really a lot about money. When I started my job, I had to sign up for my 401k because I wanted a good life in the future. So my good future was my 401k. It was a good move. My money, I signed up for life insurance so my wife could be taken care of so she could have a good life. All of these are wise decisions, but what's happening here is I'm being trained to think money is this thing, right, that fixes everything. And then suddenly, watch what happens. Not to everybody, but some people, let's just talk about money for a minute. Some people will go, oh, well, I need money then, so I need to start gambling. So gambling, oh, the Bible says gambling bad. And people say, oh, gambling not bad, we make money. And so now I start gambling and I start saying to myself that chance is more likely than God. That everything I've gained can be made more by a chance rather than giving it to God. Isn't that wild? Money, what a trip. The other questions, are things more important to you? Now don't get me wrong, I love money. Money is an awesome thing to have around. We definitely want money around. But when it controls us, right? When we say, oh man, I ain't got enough of it and I gotta kill myself to get more. You know what I mean? And I paid no more attention to my family. I paid no more attention to my dog even because I just gotta make money. So things too, right? I have a horse, right? And some people at the barn have a horse too. I take care of my horse, but if my horse dies, that's going to be all right, right? Thank God I won't have to spend the money anymore, right, on that horse. Some people, they will spend every dime they have for the horse. They'll spend $80,000 on a horse that looks just like mine. Mine was free, right? I'm not kidding. Boy or girl. They're going to kindergarten and finding out what sex is. When I was a kid, if I found out what sex is, my dad would have invented the first AR and ended that school, right? 50 years ago, nobody was okay with your kid in kindergarten learning about sex. Ever. Right? But now, lust is this thing in the end of the world that's really coming out. And people are being duped by it. And people are lying to their children. They're not even realizing they're lying to their children, being told so long. And so now lust matters. Lust and sexual immorality matters more than right thinking, more than safety, more than my family. And so when we look at what God's doing in this chapter, we're going to see in the next chapter, it's over. He ended it. He just flat out, and the world's going to look at it and go, oh my God, it's gone. It's never coming back. They're going to realize I can never do these things. Ever. And they're going to be standing at the edge of the sea wishing it was coming back and realizing it's not. So what we have to see is God doesn't think all these things are that important. Right? And so then we have to ask ourselves, what is important to God? It's not money.